Jamstack for the win. Static site generation with Gridsome. With Gift Egwenu.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to be giving this talk. And also thank you, Brian, for inviting me over to speak. So today's talk is about two of my favorite technologies, Jamstack and Gridsome. And I can't wait to show you all what you can do with them. By the end of this talk, I want people to leave with an understanding of what is possible with the Jamstack and how you can leverage these technologies to build blazing fast websites. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Gift Egwenu. I am a front-end developer and also a developer evangelist at the Ethiopian. You can find me on Twitter at LauraGift_. I'm also very passionate about building communities. So I run the Jamstack meetup in Lagos. And I'm also the Vue Vixens chapter leader in Lagos as well. And lastly, I help co-organize a conference called Concatenate Conference. Now let's get right into this talk. If anyone is familiar with the term Jamstack, you will know that there is a different way of writing it now. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I have. It recently changed from being Jamstack with the jam in caps to just the J in caps. And this really confuses me so much, even as I was writing out this talk. But that's not the main point here. Regardless of how you write it, if you decide to write it as the first option or the second option, I just want you to know that this is an amazing technology and you should try it out if you haven't. So moving on, what is the Jamstack? First, let's break down the Jam acronym down and what it means. So first, the J in the Jamstack here stands for JavaScript. All the dynamic functionalities are handled by JavaScript, and there is no restriction on what framework or library you should use. So you can decide to use Vue.js, or you can decide to use React, or you could even decide to use plain old vanilla JavaScript. It doesn't really matter. And then the A stands for APIs. These are reusable APIs accessed over HTTPS with JavaScript. These can either be third-party services or your custom-built function. And then lastly, the M stands for markup. Jamstack website gets served as static HTML files. These can be generated from source files, such as Markdown, using a static site generator. Now, bringing it all together, Jamstack is a technique for building fast and secure sites and applications delivered by first pre-rendering files and serving them directly from a CDN, removing the requirements to manage or run web servers. So you don't have to manage servers anymore, and this helps you boost performance and security for your site or your web application. Jamstack has changed the way we think and build websites now, and I can only see how it gets better from here. First of all, let's go back for a bit to when there was no Jamstack. Here's an illustration of how traditional web applications were built. They relied on server-side code to render, and you will need to return every HTML request through the server. Oftentimes, this system includes a database or a content management system and any other type of dynamic storage. This adds a layer of latency and slow performance to your website. But now let's compare this to the previous way of building websites, the Jamstack way. With Jamstack, every page is compiled ahead of time when the application is deployed. So all the JavaScript, the HTML, and the CSS, including the images, are all baked ahead of time. The goal here is to avoid as much server-executed code as possible, because when you serve static files, it is way faster and simpler than executing server-side code. So you now have the possibilities of adding as many third-party services as possible, and there is actually no limit on how many services you can add to your Jamstack website or web application. Serving static files through a CDN means that your content is cached and is available globally. What this means is that for any visitors that visit your website, the pages are served from a server closest to them. And what this does is it helps improve your performance, or it helps improve performance of your website. Now, I want to share some benefits of why I think that Jamstack is next level and why you should also rave about it, because I like to think that I'm a big Jamstack fangirl. So the first benefit of Jamstack is that it's fast by default. All your files are served and pre-built as markup, and the assets are also pushed to a CDN, making it really fast to deliver web pages. For example, like I said, when a visitor views your website, the pages are fetched from the server closest to them. So this helps make your website's performance incredible, and also helps with easy scalability. Another benefit is that it has a great developer experience. I'm also speaking from experience. As a developer, as a front-end developer, I cannot focus on the front-end parts without being tied to any monolithic architecture. This makes me more focused on building out the front end than having to depend on any server or write any server code. And then lastly, another benefit is it has better security. So now there is no need to worry about vulnerabilities or database vulnerabilities. With the server side, processes are abstracted into APIs, and now you can leverage the domain expertise of third-party services. These third-party services already has that part figured out for you. So all you need to do is just use the service, and you don't have to worry about any vulnerabilities. So here's the fun fact. There is a 60% chance that you've built a Jamstack website in the past without knowing it has a fancy name. The Jamstack started making waves in 2015. I personally heard about it in 2018, and I've been using it since then. Now it's 2020, and almost everybody is talking about it. Personally, I feel like that's a good sign, and this is a good reason why you should also be interested in learning it or be interested in using it. The Jamstack ecosystem is constantly growing. There is a massive number of services and tools available for you to leverage. The good thing is that most of these tools are actually free for you to use, so you don't have to pay a dime for them. I have these two illustrations here. The first one is, say I am trying to build a Gridsome website, and there is this thing that people like to think that static sites means you're actually just building a static site. It doesn't mean you're building a static site. You can also add dynamic functionalities to your Jamstack websites using third-party services. So I have a Gridsome website and I want to integrate a form in it. I can leverage the type form. I can leverage type form as a service. I can also use Netlify, which is a very good service for deploying your static sites. And lastly, if I decide I want to have any code, any dynamic code, I can write a serverless function for that. And here I'm leveraging Firebase Cloud Functions. And lastly, I can also push my code to GitHub. Then the second scenario here is I also have a different static site, and the need here is to have authentication, and I can use a service like Auth0 to help with that. And then say I'm trying to build an e-commerce website, I don't need to worry because I can also pull in Shopify's API and use for my sites. And obviously, because it's an e-commerce website, I'll need to add search to it. And then there's Algolia service to help with that. And if I want to go over the top and say I want to use GraphQL APIs for my websites, there is Hashura, which helps you build GraphQL APIs in minutes. This is so amazing because personally, I feel like this is one of the best technologies I've adopted. And the list goes on from there. There is a huge number of services that are available to you. Most of these services are actually free. We have services ranging from, we have different static site generator, we have different UI design or development management systems. You have headless CMSs to help you manage your content, and the list goes on. We now know what the Jamstack is, but let's also check what the Jamstack is not, because there might be like a blurry line there and it might be confusing for some folks. A site that is built with WordPress Joomla, or Squarespace. It's not a Jamstack website. If you have a single page application using isomorphic rendering to build layouts on the server side at runtime, that is also not a Jamstack website. Isomorphic rendering here means that your site is both rendered on the client side and also on the server side. So basically means you're using like Node.js as well as say Vue for that website. That is not a Jamstack website. And then lastly, a monolithic web app that relies on say Node.js, Python, or Ruby, that is also not a Jamstack website. I hope that clears that for you. Moving on now to the interesting part. What is Gridsome? Gridsome is a free and open source Vue.js powered framework for building websites and applications that are fast by default. I love the fact that fast by default is added to the definition because it is true, and I've also witnessed this. And I'll also show you, obviously. So why Gridsome? Why am I raving about Gridsome? You can actually use whatever technology you want to build your website. These are some of the few reasons why I feel like Gridsome is truly amazing. The first one is it has performance baked in. Gridsome ships with two components. The first one is called G-Link, and the second one is called G-Image. The G-Link component uses Interception Observer to prefetch links that are visible, and this results in a faster and better experience when moving from page to page on your website. And then the G-Image component, on the other hand, helps you output an impressive optimized image. So basically, this has your image lazy loaded for you. So when you visit the website, it has this blurry like preview at first, and when it's fully loaded, you have your full image loaded on the website. This helps improve performance for your website as well. Also, it also has a GraphQL data layer. This GraphQL data layer gives you access to a centralized database where you can manage all your contents and all your data. So you basically just need to pull in data into your components and have it rendered on your page. Then there is also a plugins ecosystem. There is a wide range of plugins that can help you build out your website, and you don't have to do anything from scratch. Say you're trying to pull in a headless CMS, you're trying to use a headless CMS, there is already a plugin for that. There is a plugin for Contentful, there is a plugin for Butter CMS, and there's also a plugin for Sanity. These are headless CMSs. And all you just need to do is set it up in the configuration file. There are also other plugins available like Tailwind CSS and Google Analytics. So you don't have to do these things from scratch. And lastly, it has data sourcing. What does this mean? It means that you can source data from anywhere. You can source data from an external API. You can source data from Markdown files, and you can also source data from headless CMSs. The modern web is decoupled and modular. Gridsome makes it painlessly easy to build Jamstack websites using data from multiple sources such as content APIs, headless CMSs, and other web services. Let's look at how Gridsome works under the hood. Gridsome generates static HTML that hydrates into a Vue single-page application once it is loaded in the browser. Let's say, for example, we have an About page. When you build your website, Gridsome will build one HTML file and then one JSON file for every page you have. Then after your page loads for the first time, Gridsome only uses the JSON file for fetching data for the page and subsequent pages. Additionally, it also builds a JavaScript bundle for every page that needs it. It also uses Vue Router for routing under the hood and uses Vue Meta for managing the head tags. Here's an even more detailed workflow of how Gridsome works. Like I said, Gridsome pulls in data from different data sources. It fetches content from it can fetch content from a headless CMS to your local files or even external APIs, and then stores everything in a centralized database. So you now have a unified GraphQL data layer that lets you extract only the data you need from the database, and you can now use this in your Vue.js components. The data is then generated and stored as HTML and JSON files at build time. Let's walk through some core concepts of Gridsome. These are four core concepts of Gridsome that you need to know. The first one is pages. What are pages? A page represents your data at a URL. So for instance, if you have a component called index.view, that would render as your home page. Or if you have a component called about.view within the pages directory, that would also render as an about page. On the other hand, the layout is used to wrap your pages. So for instance, a layout would contain like your navbar, your footer, or your sidebars if you have any. And this can be used across your website. So you don't need to, this can serve as a component that is used across your website. And then there are templates. Templates are used to create single pages for nodes in a collection. So when you have a blog collection, say you're trying to build a blog, you have a blog collection, and instead of creating a blog.view component, say in the pages directory, you would want to do that in the template directory, because this will help you pull in data from the GraphQL data layer easily. Then lastly, a collection is a group of nodes, and each node contains fields with custom data. You can have a blog collection, you can have a tags collection, you can have a products collection, and so on and so forth. Now, let's get into the demo section. Obviously, there's going to be a demo for this. I was actually thinking about what should I demo that would be quick and would also convey what Gridsome is and the possibilities you can actually do with Gridsome. And for the past 2 weeks, I've been working on my personal website, and I thought it would be good. It would be a great idea to actually do part of that for my demo. So for this, I want us to build just one page on my personal website. So we are going to be building the uses page. I've seen a lot of developers having this uses page on their personal websites, and I think it's really cool. So yeah, I want us to add that to my website as well. So let's get into that. I already stopped out what I want to add in my uses page, so it's easy for me to just copy this out and add to my website. So I will just go ahead here and create a new branch, because call this demo, and let me minimize this. Now, this is how Gridsome directory looks like. I can quickly walk you through each of this, or I can walk you through it as I'm going on with the demo. But basically, when you have a Gridsome website, Gridsome has a CLI that helps you in scaffolding a new Gridsome website. And that is what I also use here. So the Gridsome CLI has different commands. To run my app, I just need to run Gridsome develop. I have this cool extension here that helps me do that quickly. So I'll just get that right out of the way. Like I mentioned, we have the pages, we have layouts, we have templates as well. So because I want us to create a /uses page, I would add that in this directory. Let me just preview this. So this is my personal website. It's still work in progress, but what I want us to do here is add a uses page to it. So I'll get this out of the way. And the first thing I want to do here is to create a new file called uses, a new component called uses.view. And add actually have a shot. Earlier, I said the layout helps you with the layout helps you have like, you can put your navbar and your footer in a layout, which I already did here. If you check out my layout file, I have my navbar there. So I tend to reuse this for all my pages. So I'll just add that here. And if I check this, actually, I need to put this in the nav as well. So I'll go to the nav component and add, say, uses. Well, by default, if I go back here and put /uses, you'd see an empty page, obviously, because I don't have, okay, I actually have the navbar there for now. But because I want it to link from the home page, I'll just add that there. Okay, and going back to the components. Great. So what I want to do now is just simply copy this entire list that I have here to that page. I would first want to start with a title, obviously, because I want that site to have that page to have a title. So I'll just call that uses. And the good thing here is I'm using Tailwind CSS for my styling. So it helps me just add classes to my tags without adding any CSS, which is really cool. I want this to be, say, cfe.dev. Great. And then I want this to look exactly as I have it here. So nothing fancy at all. I just want it to be a simple list that lists out everything that I have here. So I can do this using the list tag. So I can just add them individually to the page. This might take a bit. So I already had them copied here. So I'll just do that instead. You don't want to watch me typing everything, no? Okay, this changed the formatting, so I have to type. Format document. Great, I have the first section copied out, so I can just do that for the remaining sections as well. This is a very quick and easy demo, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to work with Gridsome. And then I copy out the desktop parts here. Clean out this because I don't know why it's format document. And it has this hot reload. I'm not supposed to always reload it. I don't know why that's happening. But yeah, it should auto reload when I add new things to the page. And I can go ahead and copy the last one together. Clean this out. Actually, this is much. I'll take this one. And then format this. That should be it. Yeah, that was pretty quick, but that was what I just wanted to show you. I would also like to walk you through each of the folders here and maybe explain what they are doing. So I talked about the templates here, and this helps you pulling data from, say, a collection you have in your GraphQL API. Here I have a post component, and basically what this does is it pulls in data, only data that I need actually from the GraphQL endpoint here, and it renders as my that's weird. Okay. And it renders here. So what I'm doing basically is pulling all the posts that I have as Markdown here. And because I mentioned that Gridsome helps you, you can manage all your content in a GraphQL data layer. So I'm pulling all those Markdown contents to this page using this thing called page query. Something else that I'm doing that I would like to show you here is the number of, I mentioned that Gridsome has a plugin ecosystem. So I'll just try to show you how good that is. So here I'm managing my content using the Gridsome source file system plugin. I'm also using other plugins, like for instance, I'm using this plugin called Gridsome Plugin Remark Embed. What this does is it helps me render it helps me embed content from different sites, say from YouTube, Twitter. So when I go to my site, for instance, this has a YouTube video. You can see it helps me easily embed that, and I don't need to copy out the iframe. So usually when you want to embed a YouTube video, you have to copy out the iframe. Here I just add the link to the YouTube video and it renders it as you see. So there are other plugins. I'm also using Tailwind CSS. I'm using Google Analytics. I'm using the Gridsome plugin RSS for managing my RSS feed. The list goes on, and you can also check out the Gridsome website for more plugins that you can use. So going back to my slides. Now, I hope that showed you like a little bit of what you can do with Gridsome. There is actually more, but yeah, that is just like an introduction to what you can do with Gridsome. Now, there's also a wide range of things you can do with Gridsome. Gridsome gives you the ability to extend your website with the built-in APIs that are available. I actually have two favorite ones that I like. So let's take a look at them. The first one is the Data Store API. And the second one, obviously, is the Pages API. So let's see how this works. The Data Store API lets you insert your own data from any source, and it turns it into a GraphQL data layer. So I mentioned earlier that you can pull in content from different sources. You can pull in content from an headless CMS, from a third-party API, from different sources actually. Now, some plugins are already available for you, but if you decide to build your own, say you want to build your own plugin, or you want your own custom data source, this is when you use the Data Store API. All this is being handled in a file called gridsome.server.js. This is where you handle custom configurations. Here, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to add a new collection called blog posts. And what I use is the api.load source. And here I have a variable called posts. And I can also add different nodes to my blog post. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding a title, a date, and a description. And once I have this, I can load the GraphQL, the Gridsome GraphQL page. Let me just show you that for a bit. I hope this doesn't take. But yeah, you have this GraphQL Explore page where you can manage your GraphQL queries. It's called Gridsome GraphQL Explorer. So yeah, this comes with all the collection that I have in my website at the moment. By default, you get a page collection, and you get a metadata collection. But here I added a custom post collection and tag collection. And usually you can preview your, before adding queries to your components, you can actually preview them here. Let me just do one quickly. Say I want to fetch all posts. I don't want any custom. I can say content, description, and dates. This serves as a centralized database for every content on your Gridsome website. So here you can see all the posts that I have on my website at the moment. Actually, to make it cleaner, I'll just remove this. So these are all the posts that I have. And you can also decide to build your own custom collection. That is when you now have to use the data store API. So going back, now that I've added the node, when I run the GraphQL Explorer, I'll automatically see a blog post collection. So that's how the data store API works. So moving on, the next one is the Pages API. The Pages API lets you create custom pages. The API is called after the GraphQL schema is generated, so you can have access to the nodes and create pages from them. So there are actually two ways you can create pages. This is just the custom way of creating pages. The normal way of creating pages in Gridsome is by adding a view component to the pages directory. But say if you want to pull in data from an API, you can also use this Pages API to do that. This is how this works. So I'm trying to create a page called, a fancy name here is my page. And in order to do this, you need to call the create page object and pass in the path and the component to it. So here I'm passing the path. I want the path to be my page, and then the component is obviously the location of the component. So this is how you use the Pages API. You can actually extend this by adding, say, a different layer, or you can add different pages at once using this create page object. Now, there are so many examples of websites using Gridsome in production. I actually had to ask the community to send me some websites they've built, and they were happy to send me some of their websites they built using Gridsome. You can see that this site ranges from SaaS web applications to personal websites, so there is no limit to what you can actually build with Gridsome. This is a personal website. There is a food delivery web application, and then there is my website there as well. And there is also a different website called mwanzo.com. This helps you with planning your trips. And also another website called tractionapps.co. So this just shows you how much you can do with Gridsome. And now, where do you go from here? If you actually want to learn more about Gridsome, I would say the first place you should, or I would advise that the first place you should stop at is the documentation, because it's always helpful to start from the documentation. So Gridsome docs is really good. If you're looking to start out with Gridsome, you should check it out. And then also I would say you should join the Discord server, because it's a great opportunity for you to hang out with the community and also for you to ask your questions. And then lastly, I recommend you check out the Gridsome tag on dev.co, because personally, I have found some treasures there. Say when I was trying to figure out a problem and somebody had already written about it, I found that article on dev.co. So you can also check out the tag on dev. And that brings me to the end of my talk. So thank you so much for having me. I hope you learned something out of this, and I hope you also check out Gridsome and use it for something amazing like I already do. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or you can always send me your questions on Twitter.